It's the governor. What's going on, y'all? We here today to bring you your lesson, your food for thought. What is it going to be about? Today we're talking about change, where nothing is ever created perfect. Everything evolves. And what we're going to be hitting on today is the change that we're going to see as far as culture is concerned. And that change is here. And next episode, we'll be talking about the change to come. Now, I recently finished reading a revised history on Caligula, the Roman emperor, who reigned in the time of Pontius Pilate, as a matter of fact. And what struck me about this body of work and getting into Caligula was just how much of today's culture stemmed from Roman culture. Everything from our concept of holidays, the word holidays, to the handshakes, to just the way that our government operates, the words and ways that we operate, certain cultural taboos, just architecture, just looking at how much the Roman Empire have an effect on the modern day American culture, and how this reflected on the time that we're living in, where we lived in a time where the power was held by a certain group, and what was rationalized and what was civilized and what was lawful and unlawful and what was right and wrong, and all of this was governed by a small select group of people who would have been the same primary decision makers during the Roman Empire. And just how everything that we see today is modeled off of that, and just thinking about the connections between Rome and the church and the Germanic tribes, and just all of these attributes that we can just find embedded in our everyday culture, whether it's down to the days of the week coming from the Norse gods, or July coming from Julius Caesar. Just all of these footprints that can be traced back to Rome. And realizing that we are now living in a time where that is about to change, because the face and mind of the decision makers, the faces and the minds of the manipulators of language and of laws have evolved from where it was a select group of people that fit these physical attributes, that fit these economical statuses. They were the ones that were the decision makers and the lawmakers and the ones who sat upon high. But now we're living in a time where that's not happening. We're living in a time where the family dynamic is changing, where we still lived in this patriarchal system that kind of comes out of Germany and Rome, and how men govern their families and the status of a man within his household and how he interacted with women. But all of that is changing now. And so what we're seeing is the evolution of culture. I want to be reminded, or I would like to remind people, that the people that claim this great nation to be their homeland, they're foreigners. They were never received by the people. They really weren't ever received by the land. They mastered the land by machine, just like they mastered the people and the animals with guns. But everything evolves, and there's always been a challenge between these people who weren't from this land and the environment, to where the man didn't necessarily evolve, but the machines evolved. And we're really going to get into this in the next video, because as the machines evolved, we're going to say that some men de-evolved. Now, there's going to be, again, we're going to get into how, as a species or as a people, the gene pool has evolved in the next video. But in this video, we're just thinking about culture and how we've lived in a time that is older really than 500 years, but more like 2,000 years. And at that time has come to an end, and that it has run its course on the planet. And you can see that by what you see now as far as the space race is concerned, and wanting to be able to colonize Mars. Because time has run out here on Earth for certain people to be able to master the planet, because the planet has now become to the point where it is unpredictable, and its catastrophe and its catastrophes are becoming overwhelming, becoming more than we can keep up with. And so, again, because we want to work to master instead of work with, we're not working to evolve with the planet, but we want to work to be able to master it. And since we feel like that is a little too difficult, there is an urge to want to go to another planet, to colonize and start the process all over again. And what? Hopes for a new world, new minerals, new technology, the same thing that caused people from the old world to migrate to this world, and again establish a pattern. But that pattern is over with. And so when you hear people again, in the face of these two things that we're dealing with now, the pandemic and climate change, talk about going back to an old normal, or the way things were, or the old ways, that world doesn't exist anymore. And for those that want a better world, that world is a world that no one wants to go back to, because it wasn't as pleasant for everyone as it was for a select group of people, to which that world has been benefiting for the last 2,000 years. People would say, why? Because it was their time to reign. You say, why do we call this a time of darkness? Easy. Think about when Rome and the Germanic tribes that preceded Rome, and all the preceding models of government and governance that preceded the Romans in that ideology of warfare, when they entered a town, what did they do? They would burn the books, turn the men and boys into slaves, turn the women into prostitutes. And you were respected by your warlike capabilities. But if you're a civilized culture into the books and into the scientists and not into war, what would be left of you? So we lived in a time of darkness because we lived in a time where barbarians ruled, because it was the rule of war that ruled these times. And knowledge and wisdom was burned. Just think about it. We would still be in a state of darkness had it not been for the Muslims and their conquest and bringing numbers to Europe. I mean, So to think that we're living in an enlightened time because we have machines that can do it all and know it all, but inside we're empty, we have no connection with the world around us, we don't have any connection with each other, like that's a foolish mindset. When at one point in time we were a more unified people, a more understanding people, a less warlike, a less violent people. But we've come to respect violence now. Violence is the way. But that life, that way of thinking is over with. The warlike soldier being the savior of the day is over with. It is the one that embraces love, the one who is nonviolent, the one who is willing to reach out the hand of peace, who will soon be the victor of all battles. And that's a change, that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you're in a land where the right to bear arms and protect each other with guns is so important. But none of that in these times is going to matter, because we're evolving to a time where guns can't save you, where guns aren't the answer, and it's clear. And that those that want to live by the gun will ultimately perish by it. So that's some food for thought to think about as we look at the times that we're living in, as we listen to the discussions that we have dealing with the environmental catastrophes, and again, as the ongoing pandemic plays out, when we have to deal with vaccines and who won't take vaccines and why they won't take vaccines. And again, how is that working for the future when you're rooted in an ignorant freedom of the past? A privilege of the past. So, with that being said, stay tuned to our next video. Power up.